I can't think of a better name. Okay. But be that as it may, Journey and I are working hard on Veneer, the Book of Mass, and here's how the process works. He paints something. He paints something wonderful and beautiful, like this painting right here. I'm not sure. I think it's I think he has a little more work to do on it, but you can already see how great it looks. Then I have to decide what the hell is going on, and that's the opposite of our graphic novel, The Burlap Daughter, where I went ahead and wrote a 3,000 word short story, and then he's the one who has to decide how to adapt it, which means that both of us have experienced that gut-wrenching feeling of, how the hell do I do this? So this painting puzzled me for a while, until we started working on Veneer in greater detail. So at first, I wrote up some stuff for the lovers painting, which you'll just have to look up. I might put it here at some point, but I'm going to have to throw out everything that I wrote about the lovers painting. Just about. I mean, the facts will still be there, but the actual text, the stuff I wrote, it doesn't work anymore. And that's because I started writing about another mask, and I finally found my voice, and helped me find the voice for this painting too. So the other mask was one that I came up with. It was one that I originally sold to Journey. It's the mask of the ghost of the ghost demon, and the mask of the ghost demon. When I started writing about it, I thought to myself that Journeyman, not the artist, but the character he created decades ago, would be a great narrator. And so then I had to think, but if you haven't seen Journeyman, he's done a couple different versions of it. But in Veneer, Journeyman is going to be a something like a golem, that is something like a magical robot, but created poorly. The wizard who created him messed up, died, and his body fused with other stuff. And so now he doesn't look like a well put together golem / robot / artificial being. He looks kind of messed up. And one of the earliest things that he acquires is a mask, which allows him to interact with the world without people seeing who he really is or what he really looks like. Okay. And so he still has Journeyman still has this imperative as this created being, as the wizard intended. The wizard intended him to be a chronicler and an observer, and so that meshes well with Journeyman's desire to make something of himself, because if the wizard had lived, the wizard just would have commanded him to do stuff. But now he's basically rogue or free. And what's he going to do? Well, he has this desire to look for things and to find things. And one of them is mass. It's so I realized that this character is going to be at the center of a lot of these stories, or maybe more like to the side. Um, because he's a narrator. It's kind of like in the movie. Sorry, the movie. For goodness sakes, it's kind of like in the book, The Great Gatsby. The first voice we hear is Nick's. Nick is the narrator. And but the story is Gatsby's, and that's kind of like what Journeyman is going to be like. Um, he's going to experience things, but he's going to be the guy watching. Um, he's pretty hard to kill. He doesn't have love for combat or treasure. Um, you know, he's looking for more internal things, which allows him. He's looking for understanding. Really, he's curious about the world. So all those qualities make him a great observer, and so I wrote him like that in The Mask of the Ghost Demon, which I might talk about some other time. And that finally helped me understand this painting right here. Because the reaction to it on the stream was that people, I think, fell in love not just with the painting, but with this woman. Who is she? Why is she looking at us like this? The painting gazes at us, and yet there's all these swords, and what does that mean? So what I decided, this character with her gaze, with her look, I was thinking, what if she knows Journeyman? And so I came up with this story, and this is where we get into spoilers. And by the way, I might be killing a mosquito in a second in case you hear a clap. But this is where we get into some kind of spoiler territory. So let me see just how much I can tell you. But if you don't like spoilers, I won't hold it against you if you click out right now. So I was thinking that she seems like an adventurer to me. Even though we're not using Dungeons and Dragons rules, we're not using any rules in Book of Mass. It'll be applicable to any system because there is no system in it. But she's an adventurer, and what kind of person becomes an adventurer? It's a really dangerous, radical move. There is no other way to put it. Throwing away everything you have, traveling from one place to another, exploring strange places, risking death at every turn. That is a crazy lifestyle. And so I thought, what if she has emotional problems? What if she is, for example, classically manic depressive? Imagine that in a D&D world. Vacillating between a terrible depression and this hyperactive manic period, and not really being able to control yourself. And there are very few cleric spells, certainly no low-level cleric spells in D&D which will fix your brain chemistry. Doesn't matter how many hit points you have. So if you have that kind of real problem, you are in for a tough time. And what if she self-medicates or acts out? What if the whole adventuring thing was just a kind of acting out anyways? I mean, she's good at it in the story I'm writing in my mind. She is a really good adventurer. But in a way, she's been cursed. I know that's an old fashioned way of talking, but but that's basically that's basically her curse, and how does she deal with it? Well, curse might be an old fashioned way to say it, but people used to believe that those who had mental problems, especially the more outlandish stuff, were touched by the gods. So this is where we get to the title of the painting, "The Mask of Fate," and this is where I tie it into Journeyman as well. The story I'm going to write is about her relationship with Journeyman. A friendship in which they mutually save each other, over and over again. They kind of trade off, and until he can't save her. That's basically the story, and this idea of being touched by the gods and her manic depression being a curse, instead of, by the way, as we understand it now in modern times, a condition that can be treated, but even then it's still difficult. I know people who suffer from this, and I know that manic depression is an old way of saying it, but that's how I grew up, and it's actually pretty descriptive. It's a pretty accurate description sometimes. And it's hard. I had a friend who's a psychologist now, and she had to search for over a decade to find the right mix of pills, to keep her straight. And even then, it's it's not a perfect solution. We're basically still in the infancy of brain science. So, but anyways, yeah, there comes a point where he can't save her, and the fates step in, and this is a dramatization. The painting becomes a dramatization of the choice that the fates give her. Wear this mask in service. And so what she's seeing, and what we're seeing, is that if she serves the fates, if she takes that mask, they will control her. She's great with a sword. She's great at sneaking around. The fates need a killer. And so everything before her fate becomes swords. Everything before her becomes killing and murder on behalf of these powerful, inscrutable beings. And as terrifying or strange or weird as that may sound to us, to this character, that offer sounds like a blessed relief, because without the fates, her life just looks like a jumble of chaos. She doesn't know how she's going to feel from day to day, and how she's going to react from day to day, and that's a scary way. That's a scary way to live. So the fates offer her essentially one fate, one action, one choice. Just kill the next thing we tell you to kill. And there you go. That's that is the overview of that. Yeah. So if you stuck around and you're like, oh shit, Phil just went ahead and spoiled that. Kinda. But what I'm curious about is when you finally read the story, which might not be for a few months, and you kind of remember what it's about. How are you going to feel when you read it? I think we place too much emphasis on not being spoiled. I know that there are some movies that have genuine surprises. Some stories where you're like, oh my, that's what happens. But for the most part, finding out what happens, if something is well written or well constructed, shouldn't harm your appreciation of it. Like I knew that Hamlet died. I basically knew who lived and who died in Hamlet before I read it. It was just part of the way I studied Hamlet. And I love that play, and I love so many of the moments in it, and the fact that I know that practically everybody dies at some point in that play, except for Horatio. Horatio lives so he can tell the story. But basically, like, everybody else is wiped out. Hamlet, Claudius, Gertrude, Ophelia, Polonius, Laertes, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. I think I missed one or two. Everybody dies. Yet it's if you read it, it should still, or especially if you watch it, it should still have an emotional impact. Yeah. So that's basically that. Now about the Avengers. Let me tell you what happens at the end.